We're joined now by criminal defense attorney Randy Zelin. Randy, let me just ask you about this, because obviously there are really emotional reactions when people first see that video. But is there a circumstance in which that level of force could be deemed legally justifiable?
The answer is absolutely yes, and it can be broken down into so many different ways, not the least of which start with, hey, I'm doing the show. Show's over. I decide I'm not leaving. Well, it's going to escalate and escalate and escalate, and at some point, I'm going to be physically removed. So legally, yes, I can be physically removed. Legally, yes, the student could have been could have been removed, and with the use of reasonable force. But of course, it begs the question in today's day, today's times, being technically right no longer does it. There's got to be common sense. Okay, let's look at the situation. We have an African-American student. We've got a classroom full of students. For whatever the reason, there's an issue. Well, maybe we bring in a female officer because she's a female. Maybe we bring in another officer. Maybe we bring in an African-American officer. We do those things that we don't have to do to be sensitive, so we're not talking about it today.
You know, you look at that video, though, and I think a lot of people are going to say, I don't know what the argument is. I mean, that desk flips right over. But that video could also be used in a defense, correct?
100%. What will happen is you literally take that video and go frame by frame. And don't be surprised if after watching that video 5 times, 7 times, 10 times, slowly you may pick up something as simple as the officer trying to lift up the entire desk. And because of her weight going backwards, the desk flips over. I don't think, and it's just me surmising, I don't think he intended to flip her over backwards. He could have broken her neck. So I don't think that was part of the game plan. This all happened quickly. It escalated apparently very quickly. I don't think he expected to get the resistance that he got. And again, you're talking about dead weight. So try the experiment. Sit in a chair and good luck. Even someone much physically bigger trying to lift someone else who won't get up, you'd be surprised at what can happen.
Randy, as we heard in Omar's piece, there was another case involving this officer. He was sued for excessive force, but the jury actually sided with this deputy. How does something like that factor into this current investigation?
Let's take both sides of the coin, because what will happen is, from a civil perspective, there can be a lawsuit brought against the school. Why, you ask? Because the school, the argument would be, you knew or you had reason to know that this officer had violent propensities. And as a result, you were negligent in hiring him, and you were negligent in keeping him there. The bad news for the school district would be that there is a history. He has been charged, if you will, civilly. He was sued civilly for excessive force. So there is your reason to know. The school then will counter with, well, wait a second. First of all, we may not have known that. And even if we did know it, he was exonerated, which makes our point. And of course, the reply to that would be, well, wait a second. All that means is not that he didn't necessarily do it, but there wasn't enough evidence. So again, school district, you're on notice.
So speaking of that school district, you're on notice, and we look at the bigger picture now, not just, this case, but, should we be wondering if there's a systemic problem, if there's an issue with training, if there's an issue with oversight, or just the general protocol may be off?
Well, again, you have to look at both sides of the coin. On the one hand, police officers have such incredibly dangerous jobs. When you talk about not knowing if you're going to come home from work, I mean, there are few jobs on this planet where you can actually say that. Being a member of the armed forces, being in law enforcement, you just don't know. And when we get to the point where our officers have to think and stop and analyze, that could be the difference between life and death for the officer, life and death for a victim. But of course, that's got to be balanced against some common sense, again, particularly in a situation like this, where clearly at some point the officer knew, you know what, this ain't going to be an easy one. And that's when you call in for backup. That's when you try to calm the situation down, not escalate it. So even if technically he was right, in today's time, in today's age, where we are so sensitive to what goes on between law enforcement and our citizens, what goes on between law enforcement and citizens of color, you got to use your head and say, all right, wait a second. I do need to think here.
All right, Randy Zelin, thank you so much.
Thank you.